Hey there, gang. Welcome back. This should be a fun one. It has all the earmarks. Actually, I think we can probably offend three separate groups of people on this one. There'll be those who will suggest I shouldn't do any work on this thing at all because it's a valuable piece of kitsch and it should just remain exactly as is forever. And then there'll be another group who will be absolutely incensed with me for doing work on this thing at all because I'm going to invest a whole lot more effort into it than it's worth financially. And then there'll probably be another group who will be absolutely irate that I use certain techniques on here because they're not professional. Let's see if we can offend all of them.
A fiery horse with the speed of light, a cloud of dust, and a hearty hi-yo silver. The Lone Ranger.
In order to claim fair use for that clip, I guess I should review it or something. I could say that Gerald Moore, the voiceover artist, probably has the hardest R sounds in narration history. Hi-yo Silver, the Lone Ranger. So yeah, this is a 1939 or thereabouts Regal Supertone Lone Ranger guitar. I guess the original Lone Ranger movie, the radio serial had been around since about 1933. There was a serial, sort of a Saturday morning matinee movie, came out in 1938, I guess. So this is riding high on that wave. End of the Depression era. This guitar is not super high class. This is a plywood guitar all through. This is actually the second one of these I've seen. The other one I saw had a more traditional harmony style pin bridge on it. This one's actually got a floating bridge and a tailpiece. And the graphics on this they seem to be pure stencil. The guitar itself has got some warpage going on, some deformation. The paint is in pretty good shape though. You gotta be careful with this stuff, like wash your hands after touching it, because that's dollars to donuts, that's lead paint. Neck's in reasonable shape. It's got the original tuners. Got some celluloid rot happening there. They're starting to shrink up. A little seam separation here and there, but it's hanging together. This is actually owned by a professional musician, and believe it or not, he actually wants to play this thing. And I don't blame him, actually. It's kind of fun. The structural issues with the body here, this is a simple ladder brace guitar. We're actually missing two braces, both sides of the sound hole here. I think they just fell off at some point. Someone pulled them out there, and it's hanging together reasonably well otherwise. Fretboard's in really decent shape, and these frets here, they seem to be bar frets. I don't know if they're brass or if it's just sort of a brass alloy of some kind, but they're actually pretty tall, even in the lower positions. Got about 40 thousandths of an inch or maybe a millimeter tall. And so that's fine, we can work on that. The main thing is the action. The playability here at the 12th fret, we're looking at about 10 or 11 64ths of an inch, which is high, extremely high. And we're going to do the old Kung Fu neck reset on this one. A couple of things here. I'm going to obviously put some braces in there, and I'm going to saw through. This might, in fact, because it's made by Regal, have a dovetail in here. No, we're not going to do $800 worth of work on this guitar, okay? You can pick these things up in actually reasonable condition on Reverb for like $250. So we're going to balance expectations here with reality, and we're going to make it a serviceable bolt-on neck, and that's fine with me, Complain to someone else. I won't do it to your guitar. If you want to buy one of these and do an actual neck reset, we can talk, but I bet you're not going to like the price tag. The nut here is the other thing that I'm a little bit leery of. It's a maple nut. It's a standard width. It's really crowded on the treble strings here, and it gets really wide for the E and A. So, I don't know. We might actually end up going for a different nut on this. So they must have really been cranking these things out for Christmas that year. It was either this or the Red Ryder BB gun, and some obnoxious kid probably got both. But you can see there's certain expediencies. We're kind of crowding the edge of the treble side here. Probably improve the string line by removing the tailpiece, plugging the hole, and shifting the whole thing over about 1/8 of an inch or so. And I guess we'll save that saddle/bridge thing here as well. Oh yeah, you got to hear this thing before I do anything to it, because the question arises, why would you wanna? It's actually got its own little Depression era charm. The basses have this strange, tubby, almost like a string bass. So dead they sound like that Nick Drake kind of tone to them. Hear that buzzy sound? There is a brace here which is partially unglued down towards the bottom here, which we're going to have to fix as well. You know the original Tonto from the 1950s television show, Jay Silverheels? He comes from around here. It's over in the Six Nations Reserve, Hagersville area, I believe. Interesting. Apparently he was a really erudite guy, and he got really typecast by that role, which is kind of a shame, because he had a great voice. So I glued down the loose brace ends. Actually, all of them were loose. So I cleaned them out, got some glue in there. Just no big deal. Used my deep reach sound hole clamps. Locked those down in place. And as you can see, I've made some replacement braces for those that were missing. Nothing fancy, pretty utilitarian, diminutive in keeping with the time period. They're only about 1/2 inch tall, but that should hopefully keep things a bit more flat and prevent it from collapsing further. The old adage is you can never have too many clamps, and I'd add that if you're a guitar repair person, you need all those clamps in several different lengths as well. It's not always the fancy cam clamps you see in the luthier supply catalogs. Sometimes it's stuff from a hardware store. So I got the little baby C clamp and 2 different lengths of F clamps here to provide enough pressure along the entire length of this brace. I've got a caul which is good and rigid, and it's padded with cork. And the brace itself is slightly cambered or curved upwards, so that when I mate those 2 surfaces, it'll actually add as a bit of spring to the area of the soundboard in the center here, which has been dipping down. Hopefully counteract that a bit. For resetting the neck, I used my neck angle formula, which I've shown in a couple of other videos, to determine that I need to remove about 40 thousandths of an inch here at the end of the heel. And I've just stacked up a couple of feeler gauges. Give myself a mark to work to before I take the neck off. You can see here the end of the heel is actually separated from the body slightly, so that mark is deceptive. You know, it looks like I'm not taking off very much, but I am actually. Just putting some paraffin wax on both sides of the heel here. Makes the saw glide a little bit smoother. This neck wood feels very soft. I expect it's probably poplar. Here I'm pulling sandpaper through the joint to correct the neck angle. You've seen me do this before. I'm going to plug up the screw hole for the tail piece here with the dowel. You can see how far off center it was, and I actually have to mark and drill out the new one even farther off center to get the strings on the right line. I cut a little flat landing area on the front edge of the heel, and here I'm drilling all the way through the interior neck block for a bolt that's going to hold things tightly together. Told you this one wasn't going to be fancy. Let's pop off that old nut. Let's give it a tap with a hammer. Boop, there it goes. I'll mark out for a new nut and slot it. That'll be much better than the one that was there previously. After the neck reset, I actually need to raise the bridge height by about a 32nd of an inch or so, and also get rid of these inconsistent string grooves here for better spacing. So I plane that down and grafted on a new piece of maple on the top here. I'll cut that and plane it to shape. I found the correct intonation point and used some very thin double stick tape to hold it in place so it's not going to shift around. The fret ends were ridiculously sharp and definitely needed some rounding and dressing. On an old painted fingerboard like this, you've got to be careful with the tape. You can't stick it down too firmly, otherwise it'll just peel it all up again. And this fret wire, these bar frets, extremely narrow, very, very difficult to crown. but you do have to sort of relieve the edges as much as you can, otherwise it's very painful on the fingers. So I'm just, rounding them as much as I can. Okay, I've got some strings on and we're back in the saddle again. Pretty happy with it. The action turns out about 5/64 of an inch, just around 2 millimeters, which is pretty good given the nature of this guitar. Almost certain that's better than it was when it came from the factory. The neck is held in place with an 832 machine screw. This is a 3-inch long screw, which isn't that easy to find. A lot of hardware stores don't carry them in that length, but you can special order them. That goes through the strap button, the heel, and the interior neck block, and is held in place with just a washer and a nut. And of course, this is not the elegant way to do this, obviously. If it was a valuable vintage piece, we'd do the real neck reset. But it is a way of making a guitar playable when it otherwise wouldn't be worth it. And I don't feel bad about that. In fact, this time I didn't even take off the fingerboard extension. Sometimes I will take that off, heat it up with an iron, and then make a wedge to go under it to level the entire surface of the fingerboard all the way along the length. In this case, talk to the player. He says he's never going to go up here, so if the action gets high above the 12th fret, it doesn't really matter. So, it's ready to go. The frets, I will say this, there are some people out there who are trying to sort of create a resurgence of bar fretting, and I don't know. The thing is, you can never really get a true domed radius fret top on a bar fret. You can try, but it always seems to be that you end up banging into the sides of a squarish kind of fret. And if it's okay if you're just doing pure chording, but it's rough on the fingers, man. And if I was going to play this guitar for a very long time, I would suggest yanking these out and putting in a standard T fret. That's all.